Hello and welcome all my viewers. Today I'm doing a comparison between iPhone 6 Plus and Nexus 6. Both of them are amazingly good phones, and in the history of phones I've never been more torn between either of the two devices. Both of them are outstanding, and as I look through and walk through the process of finding which one's better for me, I'm going to go ahead and do this in a video. So hopefully any one of you could comment, talk about stuff that I missed, as well as if it's helpful for any one of you. Now, when you look at the scale at which we're going to do comparison today, I'm going to do 2 points of comparison on hardware. A lot of you would disagree that we need to go into hardware details, but quite truly we need to go into details on hardware, and there are a lot of other videos and a lot of other sites who've done quite in-depth work on hardware specifications per se. But my goal today is to not look at just the hardware, but go ahead and look at what is it that I could do with that hardware, and as I use that hardware, where is it working good for me and where is it not working good for me. So we're going to talk about hardware specification a little bit, just to touch on it. We're going to talk about look and feel and build quality, and on any of these points I'm going to rate it from a scale of 0 to 10. And but right after that we're going to go into 10 points of software comparison. We're going to look at its capability of giving me ready information. How fast, how easy is it for me to get the standard 5-7 things of information that I need from my phone. Camera, including frontal camera and video chat capabilities, mail, calendar, contacts, navigation. A lot of us today are using our phones as our only means of navigation. So we'll talk about using it from a perspective of driving to taking public transit. Reading, I admit I'm one of those people who does majority of my reading on the phone. So when I picked up a phone, I wanted to make sure that it's going to be a device that I'll be very happy using for reading. Both of these are big devices, so obviously one of the major items that come to mind is media consumption, gaming, audio, movies. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Battery life. While we talk about battery life, we'll also talk about chargers. And Siri voice command. Voice command is increasingly more and more important. I notice myself typing a lot of my emails using voice, giving instructions to the phone on voice, and so we'll look into how that plays out. Productivity apps. Productivity apps is another angle where we'll look at the documents, the Excel spreadsheets, and quite a few other apps. When we look at Apple goes ahead and includes Numbers, Pages, Keynote, GarageBand, and iMovie too. There are a couple of things I absolutely love about this, so we'll talk about that. At the same time, Google goes ahead and Google puts in all its productivity apps like Google Docs. Not on my here, but we could easily search for that. So here's Google Docs, including its Excel sheet, which I think is called Google Numbers. No, not called Google Numbers. Let's go here and Google Sheets. So we'll talk a little bit about Google Sheets, and then as a journal we'll talk about security capabilities, search capabilities, and things like that. So let's start with our level 1, which is hardware specification. I'm not going to go into details here. Again, my core goal here is to do a usage comparison. Leave aside whatever they've put in terms of their hardware, look at how I could use it and how much is it going to benefit me. So from a hardware specification perspective, Nexus has a very revolutionary quad-core processor, 3 GB of RAM, I believe a 13 megapixel camera in the back and a 2 megapixel camera in the front. And from a core specification perspective, this thing is a definite winner. When we compare it with an Apple iPhone, this thing has 1080 by 1920, which is a standard HD quality screen, versus Nexus has a quad HD, which is 2550 by something like that. So it's about, it's deceptive to say quad HD because it means that 4 times HD, but it means 4 times the 720p HD. So theoretically, the Nexus screen, I believe, is about a third bigger and better than the Apple screen. Although when you look at the Apple screen's way much better in terms of its sharpness, because this is an IPS display versus this is a regular AMO LED display, AMOLED. Now let's so from a pure hardware specification perspective, this thing's a dual core 1.4 gigahertz. This thing's a quad core 2.7 gigahertz. This thing's 1.2 megapixels in the front. This is 2 megapixels in the front. This thing's about 8 megapixels in the back. This thing's 13 megapixels in the back. Again, this one has an aperture of 2.2, I believe. So when we go into camera comparison, we'll look at how cameras work for us. Again, the key is not what they've put into it. The key for this comparison is what do I get out of it. So we'll dive into that in a minute. Pure hardware specification, my thinking is that Nexus 6 definitely takes the cake. So I will give Nexus 6 a clear 10 on this. From pure specs perspective, they've gone ahead and put absolutely perfect specs in it, except for the AMO LED display. I personally like IPS display of Apple, but I know a lot of people who love the AMO LED, so I'm not going to do any deductions for that. From an iPhone 6 Plus perspective, again, I think they've done a great job. It's just pure specifications perspective, I'll probably give it a 7 because it still leaves a lot to be desired. Apple could have definitely upped it a little bit and gone with a quad-core processor. It does leave a lot to be desired from a pure specifications perspective. So that's just part 1 of ours, of our rating. Now jumping on to part 2, which is look and feel and build quality. So from a look and feel perspective, one of the things that I find really innovative in Nexus 6 is the curved back design. Two major huge benefits that it brings to me. One, lifting it off the table is so easy. I just push it one side and pull it up. So look at it again. Push it from one side, it lifts automatically from the other side, and you pick it up. So convenient to pick this. I usually find myself picking my Nexus 6 with one hand, versus I find myself needing both the hands to pick the iPhone 6 Plus. Can I pick it? Yeah, I could theoretically pick it with one hand, but I always find that I'm kind of using two hands to pick this up. But aside from that design innovation, there are few things that are a little iffy about the Nexus, and this could have been just the piece that I got. The Nexus written in the back has the end protruding out too much, to a point that where it's actually starting to irritate my fingers. So that's the only thing that I think I can complain about Nexus. Rest of the build quality is absolutely fine, fit and perfect. No issues, feels very sturdy. The slight curvature in the back makes it really convenient to carry in your pocket too, because imagine you're putting it in your jeans or your pant, your leg has a natural curvature, so this from the inside would not fit on your leg curvature. From the outside it tries to compensate as much as possible, versus something like this. tends to protrude a little bit more from the edges. So despite the fact that this is more broader, I find it more convenient to carry a Nexus 6. But from a pure build quality perspective, I think I'll go ahead and give Apple a mark or two over Nexus, just because if I found this one issue, I'm pretty sure that other pieces have other issues associated with them. And although it's very minor, but leads me to believe that there'll probably be other things under the hood that I may not know yet about. So my take here is that Apple takes the ace on build quality, which is 10, but Nexus follows closely behind with a 9. I don't see any major flaws. In fact, most of it looks absolutely brilliantly put together. This brings our hardware total for both of these devices to 19 and 17. Now, as I said, Apple could have, and I believe should have done better from a hardware specification perspective. I have been an Apple user for a very long time, and I find that even though a lower specification Mac may be priced equivalent to a higher specification Windows machine, but they do tend to behave almost the inverse. I find that Apple gives me more productivity on a much lower specification than Windows. And I believe Apple's still riding that bandwagon, but I think with Nexus it's different. It's not Windows anymore that they're fighting against, it's Google. And I think they need to up their ante a little bit. Now let's talk about software. Enough's been said about hardware. There's just millions of blogs about it. Let's talk about software, which most people tend to kind of put it on the side whenever a new device comes in. And let's talk about usability of that software, not just pure key features of that software. So first thing first that I prefer my phone to do is give me ready information. I live up in Canada, so I check weather about 3 times a day. And I love for my phone to just keep me updated on what's happening in terms of email, social, calendar, things like that. So from a Nexus perspective, the moment you touch the device and it moves, it kind of tells you a broad overview of what things are. Which I absolutely love about this device. So as you come close to it and you're even trying to just pick it up, it'll give you a black and white screen. And right now I've already picked it up and I've touched the screen, so it's become color. But when it's been lying around for a bit and you just come close and you just touch the device, it'll give you a black and white screen, which is exactly the same as your home screen. Tells you the time, tells you weather, because I have a weather widget installed, and tells you a little bit about your emails, your calendar appointments. Now this screen is kind of there in Apple too. When you touch Apple will go ahead and tell you a little bit more details in terms of your emails and things like that right here. Major drawback that I find in Apple is, at least to me right now, I have not been able to configure it to bring weather right on that screen. And number 2, when you look at Google, you notice that emails are red, and if there were calendar appointments right now, they'll be in blue. So very solid color differentiation to point out different items. In Apple, on the home screen, I have to look a little bit more carefully because most of those icons are kind of reddish, and I have to look at an icon a little bit more carefully to figure out whether this icon is email or calendar. So I think it'll serve Apple a lot better if they could redesign their home screen a little bit and use more crisper icons and more clearer icons, so I could easily distinguish what's my email and what's a calendar appointment, and also somehow, and maybe this is just my ignorance, get the capability of bringing weather here. Even with Google, despite it showing me the weather on my home screen, for colder climates it's not very relevant because you're looking at -6 here in Brampton which is not very relevant, because what you want to see is really the feels like temperature, which is negative 17. So an enhancement that I might recommend is just allow you to bring in certain points of the weather on that widget, so that that widget could really give you much more information. I always find myself taking the 3 steps of unlocking the phone, and then sliding it down, then picking the weather, and then being able to see what it feels like. In case of iPhone, it just takes a tad little bit longer actually to get there. So my steps are: press this button once, then hold your thumb there and that button. Off lately, I've been getting a lot of try agains on fingerprint, and that's probably because I've been getting out there a lot and clearing snow, which has ruined my fingertips a little bit, and that's not making me love Apple as much. And then so 2 clicks, weather, scroll up, and here you see the feels like. So a little bit more involved in terms of Apple, and if any one of you knows a better way, then please go ahead, comment at the bottom. So that's where the ready info takes me. In this case, I will go ahead and give Nexus a clear 10, because Nexus is a winner on this. Something that I also did forget to mention is Google Now. And before I get there, some of you who are watching it more carefully would say, hey, but on Apple you actually have it to lock in on fingerprint, versus on Nexus 6 you have it automatically unlocked, so you don't have to actually enter a pattern or a code to unlock it. And that's not the case. I have a pattern unlock on this, but I've also been able to set it up to specify unlock at my home location. Again, this is something that you guys can, there are other tutorials that will go ahead and help you with that on the web. But screen lock is pattern, so you could say that there is a pattern specified for screen lock, but also I've been able to configure to not lock at my home. So it's always unlocked at the home address, within, I believe, 50 meters of my home address.